As of first thing this morning, we've identified in excess of 10,000 primary and secondary contacts who will need to either quarantine or test and isolate, and that number will continue to grow and change.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready, Father.
Is this a take or we're just practicing?
This is a take.
Okay.
You're good.
With this corona, starting again. With this corona pandemic flooding the airways as it has been, it set me to thinking. I cannot remember a single disaster as bad as this one since the days of the Second World War. I was born in 1935, so when the war broke out I was roughly 4 years of age. During those years we weren't a well-off family by any means. I was the youngest of 5 boys, and along with Mum and Dad we lived in the working class suburbs of Melbourne. The government had introduced food rations and jobs were hard to find. My father was lucky enough to get a job working on the docks as a labourer, but much of his day was spent dealing with standover men who were hell-bent on breaking the rules and trying his patience. Sadly, we suspect that his job and his temperament might have been the reason my dad developed a heart condition. His local doctor said to him, "Now, Bill, if you don't give away this job on the wharf, it's highly likely your ticker will give up the ghost and you'll drop dead without warning." So Dad heeded the doctor's advice and resigned from his job that same day. Suddenly finding himself without employment and no way to support Mum and us kids, Dad took the advice of a friend, gathered up a few bob he'd been saving over the years and purchased a couple of second-hand show rides. He then loaded up the old Chev truck and we all took off to join the travelling country carnival circuit. Our eldest brother Alan was showing great potential at school, and so it was decided he would live with my grandparents while the rest of us became bona fide carnies. There simply isn't a more exciting and colourful world for a young boy to experience than the world of carnivals and carny folk, all of them desperately trying to make a living. Dad ran the mechanical chaeroplane and ocean wave while Mum looked after the pennies on the square, where if your penny lobbed on the right square you'd win a prize. Frank, who was only 14 at the time, worked the knock'ems. If a person standing out the front hit a doll over with the hard wooden ball, they'd win a chocolate. Hence the saying, knock a dolly, win a lolly. Billy ran the cage and dice, where he would spin the cage and if your numbers came up you'd win a prize. As for Normie and myself, we were too young to deal with crowds and patrons, so we were left to run free and wild, which is exactly what we did.
It's all right here, right now.
There were some truly amazing characters that populated the shows, and it seems any and all methods, both legal and otherwise, were up for grabs. I remember this one fella, who was basically a crook, had the attraction of a dancing duck. People would gather around amazed at this little duck dancing its heart out to music from a gramophone. And that was until someone finally twigged the duck was standing on a hot metal plate. The coppers were called in and the man and his duck were carted off, never to be seen again. Then there was Marco the snake charmer. We reckon he'd been bitten so many times he had more venom in him than any of his snakes. Then there was Snowy Willoughby, who decided it would be a fabulous idea to introduce a mermaid to his show. So he engaged the services of a rather carefree girl from town, and to make her look authentic, he painted her with bloody silver frost paint. What Snowy didn't realise that the human skin has got to breathe, and of course the silver frost paint had blocked up all the girl's skin, and after a while she toppled off into the water and started floating around like a dead mullet.
She's not moving.
They had to race her off to the local bush hospital while Snowy had to pack up and beat an early retreat out of town before they lynched him. Another attraction which made us all laugh was the amazing headless man. People came from far and wide just to see this extraordinary phenomenon.
Thanks, mate.
That was until a local reporter witnessed food being passed into the headless man's tent. The newspaper the next morning read, "The headless man enjoys a roast chicken with carrots and peas." Another bloke that I remember well, I was very fond of, was a fellow by the name of Waxy Elliott. One of his legs was made of tin from the knee down, and he had this new toy. It was a deep-sea diver blowing bubbles, and I'd never seen anything like this in all my life. Most of the showies had trucks and vans to cart their stuff, and when they'd moved from one show to another, Waxy used to go cross-country. And he knew every back road and bush track that there was. And by the time we'd get to the next show, Waxy would already be there, set up and ready to go. Yes, Carney folk were remarkable people, and closing time was always special. Everyone would sit around the campfire laughing about the oddities of their day and sharing tall tales and true.
And here they are, folks, the mighty Australian fighters themselves.
I can honestly say Carney people are a unique bunch, and I love being around them. But sadly, our days at the carnival were short-lived. One day, this drunk buffalo-headed woodchopper was cheating at the knock'em game. Seeing this, Frank tried to explain the rules, but the man just grabbed Frank by the scruff of the neck and hurled him into the display. Dad, hearing about this, chased him up the hill. Dad hit him with the best combo punch of all time and knocked him out cold. Then the woodchopper's wife came at Dad with an axe. Mum grabbed it off her and said, "Don't you come that caper, you bitch, or I'll split you down the centre." After that little blue, Mum and Dad figured with his health deteriorating even further, it was time to wrap up the carny life and return to Melbourne. We'd been away for just on 2 years, and we settled in a place called Marabanong, nicknamed the town too tough to die. We rented a small block of land from a local family for 5 shillings a week and pitched the carnival tent, which became our home. We were poor and we didn't have much, and some of the locals called us the tent family. I'm sure that was embarrassing for Mum, but us kids didn't see it that way. We had each other, and that's all that mattered. So it was heartbreaking for us young kids when both Frank and Alan enlisted in the army. Frank was stationed in Western Australia while Alan was sent to fight the Japanese in New Guinea. But it's funny how the world turns, because not long after the eldest boys had left, Mum fell pregnant again, and 9 months later we were blessed with the birth of our little sister Irene, the only girl in a family of 5 boys. Irene had only been in the tent a few weeks when we had some little visitors that nearly drove us all mad. A rat plague from hell. The next day, Mum sprang into action and mixed up some phosphorus powder. That night they came back, and once they ate it all up, their little eyes seemed to glow in the dark. And that was the end of that. Then came the day I'll never forget. I had recently taken up drawing, and my baby sister was playing on the ground. Dad was enjoying her company when I saw something wasn't right. He looked upset or in pain. I wasn't sure. I was too young to comprehend what was happening. I should have woken up my mother, but I just froze. I just sat there watching Irene crawl across to him. My dear father had just died of a heart attack, and our lives would never be the same. Some of the local women pitched in to buy Dad a suit, and the undertakers prepped his body. Once they were done, they called us boys over, Billy, Norm and myself, and got us to line up and one by one kiss our father goodbye. His lips were so cold, and it affected me for years because I'd never kissed him the whole time he'd been alive. The state authorities wanted to take us kids away, make us wards of the state, but Mum stood up and said, "No one is taking my kids," and by God she meant it. She was a tough woman, my mother, and I was blessed to have her and my brothers to protect and look after me. World War II finally came to an end, and my brothers Frank and Alan came home with their lives intact. We all continued to live in that carny tent until I was 16 years of age. Sadly, Irene and I are the last surviving family members. COVID was 5 years ago, and I'm now living in a care facility. You know, I look back to those days as the best of times with me family, and I wouldn't trade a single one of those memories for anything. Even though my body keeps breaking down, my mind is still sharp and my memories of my youth are wonderfully vivid. I decided recently to put pen to paper, to write a poem about my family in those early years. I glance around the table at Frank and Norm and Bill, and not forgetting Irene, who's our only sister still. And then of course there is Alan, the eldest, tall and calm and kind, a finer bloody mob in this world you'd never find, for there's love and strength and courage, dedication to each other, and that quality of not giving in passed down to us from Mother. Yes, I think about the old days and how my life was spent with the greatest of all families. So I sit back now, quite content.